In this lesson, we will learn about inverse kinematics. Now, before we understand what inverse kinematics is, we first need to understand forward kinematics. So forward kinematics is really simple. It's just a matter of rotating objects in a hierarchy and animating that rotation. So we could use forward kinematics for arm swings and a walk cycle, but for footsteps, it might be best to use inverse kinematics. Let's go ahead and apply an inverse kinematic solver to this bone chain so we can take a look at how the chain will react. So here's how this works. We would first choose the start bone object that we would like to tie the system to. It doesn't have to be the root at all. It can be any one of these bones except for the very end, because we need a way to connect the end of the solver in order to get inverse kinematics to work. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and grab the root bone here just to start. We may need to change that when it's time to create the actual handle we'll work with. But once that bone is selected, we can now move to animation, IK solvers, and we're going to go ahead and work with the first solver, history independent. This is typically going to be the solver that you use for character animation. It offers a lot of control for elbows, for getting arms and legs to move just right. But let's go ahead and connect it. Take a look at what will happen. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the first solver here. And now what we need to do is grab the very end of our chain. So you can see now a handle has been created. This is known as our goal object. And watch, as we start to move this, you can see that now the rotation of our chain is inverse to follow this handle. So that's what inverse kinematics is all about. So this would be great again for animating arms, for legs, possibly tentacles. All right, so those are just a few ideas. So I'll go ahead and undo that back. Now, something important to keep in mind is that once we are in IK mode, we cannot rotate any of our bone objects, not unless we switch to FK. So if we were to go ahead and select our IK goal again, take a look under the motion panel. If we were to scroll down to our IK solver rollout, we could go ahead and turn off enabled, and now we can freely go in and rotate our bone objects. When we're ready to move back to IK, we simply turn on enabled. Notice we can no longer go in and rotate that same bone, but we can go in and start to move our IK handle around. Alright, so that is the gist of inverse kinematics. Now we are going to switch between IK and FK for our final animation where we animate a flight sequence. So we'll learn how to do that closer to the end of this tutorial, which will be another really fun topic. But right now, we're not ready for that. We're not ready for animation because there are a few things that need to be adjusted on our FK chain in order for IK to work the best way. So one issue is the twist we have here at the end of the chain. When it comes time to rotate the chain in FK, our rotate manipulator, take a look, it's not ideal for rotation at all. So we need to think about things like that. Also, taking a look at the overall resolution of our bone chain, if we were to go back and show our fueling line, let's go ahead and scroll down till we find unhide by name. We're going to grab hose and choose unhide. You can see that there are a few bones that don't quite fit too well within this geometry. The more bones we have, the better our deformations will be, but we need to find a happy medium because we don't want too many bones where animation just becomes a nightmare when we need to animate in FK. If we're just sticking with IK, well then it's not too big of a deal. Alright, so what we're going to go ahead and do, since we're going to tweak this bone chain, so we're going to go ahead and take our IK goal and we're going to just remove it. Alright, that's the safest way. We don't want to add any bones with that system in place. Alright, so what we'll do now is go ahead and select each bone to add more resolution, and we could use refine for that. So I'll go to the start here. We'll go ahead and split that bone. That way when we connect our inverse kinematic handle, we can go ahead and connect to this bone and leave the end in place. We're going to get into skinning shortly, which is the process of causing geometry to deform based off of bone objects. So we'll learn about that very soon, actually in the next lesson. So we're just making sure that we're going to get some really nice results, and we'll get those results by adding more resolution to our bone objects. So let's just go in and continue to click. Feel free to zoom in a little bit closer if you need to, just to make sure that each bone is split at the right point. I'll go in and start to split this bone object that we'll eventually need to twist in order to fix its orientation. Okay, great. So I think that this is going to work well. What we could do now is right-click to exit refine mode. We could go ahead and select our fueling line again, and let's go ahead and hide it. Hide selected. And now we could go ahead and start to work with bone edit mode to fix each bone so that it fits well on the fueling line shape. Alright, great. So just go in and take a look. Looks like most of these will work well. It looks like when we get closer to the end of the chain, there are a few that will need to be adjusted. Now I'd like to take a look at the very end here. I want to make sure that this is tweaked properly. So for this bone at the very end, it might be a good idea to double click to grab the entire chain. From there, I'll go ahead and switch the coordinate system to world. And then we could go ahead and just translate all of these up. Need to be careful not to add too much twisting. If we translate up too high, we might notice that the bone starts to twist a bit. But no worries, we'll just go ahead and bring it up to our line just a bit more. And I think that's going to work out well. So now we can go ahead and click on the other bones to make sure that they're conform to our fueling line's shape. Alright, great. Taking a look at the bone at the top, we want to go ahead and drag that down. We could also go ahead and drag the nub down as well. Alright, that's going to work out very well for us. Now as far as fixing the orientation of these objects, we can twist them in bone edit mode. So we can go in and start to add some twisting. We don't want to twist too far sometimes because we may notice that the child objects twist in an undesirable way. So we just want to be very careful about that. We do want to make sure that when it's time to animate these in FK, that the control will be ideal, that the orientation is going to be just fine. Alright, great. So just a few more tweaks here in bone edit mode just to make sure that the nub and the other objects are aligned properly. Go ahead and slide that over. There we go. Just a few more. Great. Alright, so once we have made these changes, it's a good idea to go ahead and freeze transforms on our bone objects to kind of reset things, start them at a 0 position, so it's easier for us to animate. So with our root selected, again, what we do is we use Control Page Down to grab the entire chain. We can now Alt right click and choose Freeze Transform. We're now ready to create our IK system again. So again, we go ahead and grab the bone that we identified as the root of our IK solver. Okay, not the one that's connected into the fueling station, but the one right after it. That way the end stays glued in. Go ahead and select that bone object. We'll head over to Animation, IK Solvers, grab the History Independent Solver, and connect to our nub. Beautiful. Alright, so once that is in place, we can go ahead and test things out. That's looking great. Feel free to rename your IK handle. You can always call this IK underscore fueling line 01. Fantastic. Let's go ahead and take a look at our layers. We might want to add this to objects to hide. So let's go ahead and choose add. For these bone objects, you can also add them to objects to hide if you like. Again, so go ahead and select the root, Control Page Down, and go ahead and choose add. That way, when it's time to clean everything up, they have a home in the layer manager. All right, fantastic. So the last thing we can do here is make sure that the IK goal is linked to our airship. So we could always link it to the geometry here that's closest to it. I'll press page up just to make sure that it went to the right object. All right, fantastic. And now, when we grab our airship's control and then we start to move it around, you can see that the fueling line is going to follow very well. Now, the only thing we need to be concerned with is how the geometry of our fueling line is going to follow, and that is what we'll discuss in the next lesson when we discuss skinning.